Hello everyone, welcome back to another business analysis video. I'm so excited about today's topic because we're talking about requirements. Requirement engineering is one of the core expectation of the business analysis career. It's one of the things that's just repetitively come up that we have to do, you know? Right, so it can be quite confusing when people talk about, or maybe in your career, or if you're just starting out, when you hear people talk about requirements, process models, use cases, user stories, business rules, acceptance criteria. Which one is the requirements among all these things? They can be quite confusing, right? So firstly, a business analyst needs to really understand what the business goals are in an organization. If you find yourself as a business analyst, you need to understand what the business goals are or what the project goals are and what needs to change in order to get to these goals. So in order to understand this, it involves interacting with the business, reading documents and trying to understand what the current processes are, right? What does the business do currently? And with this, we are creating business processes using process models, BPMN, swim lanes. We are understanding what does the business do currently, firstly, in order to then begin to understand what changes need to be made in order to get to that goal. Okay? So an example could be understanding the various steps involved in onboarding a new employee. For example, what are the steps involved in onboarding a new employee? You receive an onboarding request from someone, you process that request, and then you onboard the new employee. And then finally, you send an update to the requester. Okay? That is one high-level sequence of a quick onboarding process, okay? With this process that I've just described, the business analyst also needs to know what the business rules are. In this example, let's look at the processing of the request. Maybe within the system, maybe there's some interactions with various stakeholders, various actors in that process. A business rule could be, for example, within the processing that request, the details entailed within that process need to contain the employee personal details, such as employee address, employee first name and last name, employee gender, for example, if that's required. The details also has to include employee type, whether they're permanent, whether they're contracting, you know, whether they're temporary type of employee. So these are the business rules that will fall within the process of processing the request for a new employee onboarding onto the company. So within this step, the business analyst needs to understand the business processes and business rules before trying to understand what the requirements are, okay? Number 2, where does the business want to go, okay? The second question you're asking for your requirements gathering or requirements engineering is understanding where the business needs or wants to go. So you may be put on a project like a huge initiative where it probably involves the transformation of a whole system, of a whole process, okay? Or you can be involved in a high level change, maybe just changing certain features within a system, for example. Yep, so we're trying to, in understanding where the business needs to go, the business needs to change a bunch of processes, To transform a whole system, and transforming that system will affect current processes, current actors' daily activities. Okay, so we're trying to understand the business needs to get somewhere. They need to change this system to be more efficient, to deliver and add more better and add value to the business. Yep, so that's where we're trying to go. Okay, that's number 2. Number 3, why are we doing this? Usually it's kind of entailed in number 2 as well. Why are we doing this? We're doing this because it saves time, it reduces manual interaction, for example, reduces cost, you know. So sometimes you already know why we're doing this. However, sometimes you also have to dig deeper to understand why we're doing this, okay? So the reason that understanding why we're doing this is to maintain the scope of the project, okay? So that everyone within that change or within that initiative can understand what value we are bringing, okay? And we can actually focus on that without going outside the scope, okay? And at the same time, with knowing why we're doing this, we're able to prioritize the features for the change or for the initiative, okay? Good. Number 4 is the actual requirements, okay? Requirements technically are the required capability of a system, of a process. So this is where it gets much more interesting, right? In a few of my videos, I've talked about waterfall and agile, okay? So in waterfall documentation for your requirements, you're documenting your business requirements at the highest level and looking at representing the enterprise needs. On the other hand, with agile, it starts out as an epic or a feature. What is your highest level requirement will be referred to as your epic or a feature. So one example could be the ability for the system to automatically populate the employee details from the recruiter entry. Okay, so in our why, we want to automate certain areas or certain tasks and processes within that process. So one of our feature would be that part. Okay, number 5. So we have our high-level requirements. We haven't really spoken to any stakeholders, right? So number 5, the business analyst needs to determine who the stakeholders are in order to draw out the lower-level requirements, okay? So what stakeholders are needed in order to meet the business needs? So you develop stakeholder requirements in a waterfall, or in agile, you develop user stories. So an example is we have identified 2 stakeholders, which are the HR ops and the service desk. So somebody from HR ops as well as somebody from service desk who are involved with the employee onboarding process. So our high level or feature or epic, like I mentioned before, is the ability to automate employee detail entry from the recruiter point, okay? So one of our stories could be the ability to create or generate new joiner ID by employee type and contract type. Another one could be the ability to send new joiner information to service desk via the system. The third one could be the ability to receive new email and ID, an employee ID via the service desk, okay? And then speaking with the service desk, our user stories or requirements, really, we haven't fleshed it out to be in user story format yet. However, we can represent these as requirements in waterfall environment. From service desk point of view is the ability to create new employee email and user ID within 5 minutes of receiving the information. Did you notice a business rule there? So you also take that into consideration. Another one could be the ability to share this automatically once updated. share this automatically with HR ops. Number 6 is the breaking down of these needs, these requirements that you've elicited from your stakeholders are now broken down into more specific solution capabilities or requirements, which are the functional and non-functional that I mentioned, okay? So an example of a functional one could be an interface-related requirement, such as auto-populating fields, whereas a non-functional one could be that the ID must be created within 5 minutes, which is a time frame non-functional requirement, within 5 minutes of receipt via the HR system to the service desk. So it really depends on the methodology that the company adopts. So how you write these requirements might be different. You need to understand what methodology they take and what, through reading documentations, through reading documents and interacting with maybe your manager or other BAs or project managers, you understand what methodology, what environment, or what how they present their requirements, okay? So don't worry too much about it, right? So in a waterfall environment, how you would present a requirement, from my experience, is writing it in this way. The system must, or the system shall, okay? That's how you start it. And the functional requirements can also exist in the acceptance criteria or the user stories in agile environments. So you would write a user story in this format. As a user, I want X so that X. So in order to write one user story, the topic of our user story could be create new joiner ID, right? And my user story description would be, as HR, I want to generate new employee ID by employee type and contract type, so that I can distinguish between the types of employees for reporting purposes. Okay, this is our user story. And then in Agile, we also go ahead to break down these user stories in acceptance criteria. Okay, and this acceptance criteria is written in the format in Gherkin. It's called Gherkin format, or BDD, which is behavior driven development, and it's written in the format given, when, then. So I would state it in this format. Given I am on the HR system and I have received new onboarding requests from recruiter, when I click import, then I can select the received, so you would receive this document from the recruiter. Then I can select the received document from my folder, then I can click upload, and this will automatically, then I can click upload. In my heading bracket, this would automatically populate the employee details, okay? So then I will click upload. Then the system shall populate employee details onto that section. This is how I would write that requirements, okay? I'm saying this off the top of my head, so just to give you a guide, okay? So this is not really like a real instance. It's just to give you a guide on the steps on what you want the dev team to create. You want them to create a section in the system where once HR clicks upload, they select the document that they've received from recruiter, and then they can upload, and then the system will automatically populate employee name, employee number, and blah 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 blah, okay? Then I can click finish, and this would automatically just update the employee details. It's just an example, so we write it in the format given, when, then, okay? So a quick recap. The The business analyst needs to understand the people, the process, the technology, analyze these, and then from here determine what the requirements are, what requirements combine in order to form the solution, which is the goal where the business is trying to get to, so that it meets the business objectives, right? And in order for the solution or the business goal to be met, the business needs projects. The business needs projects. And in order for a project to be accomplished, right, it requires resources. And resources will include the business analysts, the designers, the developers, the project managers, okay? So this is a recap. I don't think there's anything else. I don't think there's anything else. I hope I've been able to break requirements down well, I hope, to you, and how to write these requirements in both waterfall and agile environments. So that's the end of today's topic. I hope you've enjoyed watching. As always, please do subscribe, like, comment. Let me know what you think about the video, and let me know what you think I should talk about. If you're in the business analysis career or thinking of becoming a business analyst, make suggestions on what you'd like to learn, and I'm happy to help. Finally, if you haven't subscribed, what are you waiting for? What are you doing? Go ahead and click the subscribe button and keep the love spreading. See you in my next one. Peace.